Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind and Reflect, where we believe that the universal law of there's no such thing as coincidences or mistakes is the truth, and that we would like to share our experiences on the subject with you, our audience. I'm Deb Miller.
And I am Susan Doyle, and welcome everybody. Hi, Deb.
Hi, as you can hear, I have a little cold. There's
Sorry.
rampant illness going on around me.
Yeah,
Everybody, their brother is sick. So I guess this is my week to suffer through it.
sorry. Um, so a couple of things. Number one, I have to tell you, I was in my yoga class on Saturday, which is kind of like my church. And he had this great line that I know I'm going to screw it up, but basically he said to the class, the universe has been conspiring to bring you all here. And I
Oh my
was
gosh.
like, I love that the universe has been conspiring. My
Yes.
new favorite term.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, and I totally believe that. I've been hearing a lot of messages this week about trusting in God's time, trusting that the time um, for whatever to happen in our life that's meant to be is going to happen, but it happens in God's time. And let me just take a little bit of a deep dive on that. It's to me, God is universe, God is love, God is high energy, loving energy, kind energy. So when I say the word God, some people might not like that, but I'm referring to the universe as a whole. When I say God, God is love.
Well, thank you so much for clarifying that because I am one of those people that somebody says God and I automatically I'm like,
I know.
keep it to yourself. But I have come to realize over the course of time and working with, my therapist and going to yoga and really understanding that the universe is conspiring and that the universal energy that is
Yes.
spoken about is referred to as God to some people or the universe to some people or energy to other people. So I now come from a place where I'm not as turned off when somebody
Yeah.
says the word God. So I
I know.
appreciate you saying that.
It's tough. I mean, in the program of recovery, there's a lot of God. There's a lot, and people just they can't handle it. And so I I struggle to help them to see like it's okay. It's not God doesn't have to be that man in the sky that punishes people or whatever that is. You know,
Hmm.
again, for me, and that evolved for me over the years. I didn't always feel like that. Sometimes I did believe that there was God who was in the sky, who was looking over us and punishing us for bad whatever, bad behavior. And but now as my spiritual journey grows and I continue down that path, it does turn into God is a loving energy.
I was going to say, God is an energy. Whether you choose to put a face, a body, a
Mm.
color, an outfit with it is really your choice, correct?
Yeah.
As an
Right.
individual, but to me, God is an energy. God is a sense. God is a feeling. God is the universe speaking.
That's right. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
So in talking it last week, we were talking about your journey, and I don't reflect on your journey with a smile, but I do reflect on the way that we came to be friends, always with a smile. And when I think about, the shenanigans we used to get into and some of the trouble back in the 80s we used to get into, it always makes me laugh and always makes me smile. But so I have a couple of questions for you that I'm sure will resonate with some of our listeners. And, so I wanted to sort of set the stage that we were teenagers growing up, no social media, we had a landline, and it was like a big day when we got a phone in our room when we turned
Oh
a
my
certain
gosh.
age or whatever. But we used to see each other every Friday and Saturday night, and, obviously every day during the week at school. But whoever's parents were out, we would go to their house. And we had a very small, insulated group of friends, very small. Like, people, I have been friends with your life partner since I was in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Um, so it was very insulated. We all took care of each other. We never felt unsafe. We never felt like if we got drunk, somebody was going to leave us somewhere, or, and we all kind of experimented together. So I would say, I think starting in probably eighth grade, we started drinking, started mixing the jungle juice on a Friday and Saturday night to kind of get buzzed and see, and maybe sneak a cig from one of our moms, because both of our moms smoked, and a lot of our friends' moms smoked. So, like, if we could each sneak one or two, we would have
Yeah.
like a whole weekend's worth of cigarettes. Um, and so I remember you saying something the other day about, you didn't phrase it as an addictive personality, but people have said that there is an addictive personality, whether it's a DNA trait or whether it's just something that you get that drug of choice. Or for me, it was, my drug of choice was exercise and anorexic behavior. And it's like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. This is what I've been searching for. And so I think it would really help a lot of people if we talk about, when we were 14 and 15 and 16 and experimenting, did you feel, even though we didn't know what it was, that you had an addictive personality?
Hmm. That's a really good question. I did not. I did not feel like I had any kind of addictive personality. There was nothing that kind of grabbed me at that time and wouldn't let me go. I loved drinking and partying. It was fun, but let's face it, it always ended up with me and my face in the toilet. Like I never like I was always sick from it and the next day feeling awful. So I never woke up craving like it was more like, oh, that was so much fun. Let's do it again. But it wasn't anything chemically that was driving me to feel that way again. It was always for me a social thing. I liked the feeling of letting loose, letting my guard down, being more interactive with people, feeling more confident about myself, all those things that alcohol brings. I loved those feelings, but I didn't crave the alcohol the next morning. It wasn't until my the first time that I experimented with opioids, I started with cocaine. And this was after I was out of school. It was, I think, probably one of my summers during my college years, like my probably my first college summer. And when that chemical hit my brain, that was a whole different story. That
So
was
tell me about that. What was the difference between us partying every weekend in high school, and you, not necessarily your words, didn't crave it, but did you look forward to it? Like on Wednesday or Thursday or Friday morning, did you start looking forward to drinking on the weekend?
I totally looked forward to like having a party or going to a party and seeing people and drinking. Could I ever imagine myself being out in public on a weekend without, or in a public setting, whether it be a bar or a party or in the middle of the cornfield, wherever we would end up, or down by the river in a van, right? Like, could I ever imagine myself showing up at those places and not drinking? Absolutely not. What is the point? So
Right.
yeah, I loved that. I loved that scene. But chemically, the alcohol now I know it was a depressant. So
Hmm.
yeah, I would be the one who would be partying and having fun and then bawling her eyes out because I'm too drunk and like, or like confessing my whole feelings for somebody. Like that was me. And then throwing up that night and the next morning. Like I knew what would come with the drinking and it was fun, but then it wasn't fun. With the stimulant in cocaine and my chemistry, it hit like it was the best feeling I've ever had. I felt energized. I felt social because you got to remember my natural personality. People might think I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. I am most comfortable being by myself in a little cocoon. But I can be an extrovert and I can go out but it exhausts me. It does it like by the end of the event, whether it with the social event, I'm exhausted and I need to recoup. So cocaine gave me that ability to like just go, 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 go and do all the fun stuff and hang out and be able to hang as my Sigot Kevin will say, like there's just some people who can't hang. I was one of those first
Right.
people. I just couldn't hang. I'd like get tired, I'd drink, I'd get tired, I'd get sick. It just wasn't like my scene. But alcoholics, people who are true, and I look at, let me also say that any mind altering substances to me all fit in the same category. So whether it's drugs or alcohol, or you get high from exercise or whatever that may be, anything that's unhealthy, that to me is an addiction. So I refer to myself, I go to a lot of AA meetings, and I will refer to myself as an addict and an alcoholic. And I know that because when the drugs later on in life, when I got really addicted to the painkillers, if they weren't available, I was drinking. I turned to alcohol, even though I knew it would make me sick and I didn't really love it, but anything to keep my mind out of a sober place, I did. So I knew that alcohol was also a problem. And I also know that if I drink today, because people will say, well, why can't you just drink? Because if I drink and I spiral from that depression, because it's a depressant, I'm going to want to take something to lift me up. And that will be Adderall or pain pills or whatever I can get my hands on. So I can't drink or drug, and that's just how I live my life without doing that.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm sorry, did you have a question?
No.
So it wasn't until that chemical reaction hit my brain that I was like, I want more. And I would binge and it called to me
And it
every
was literally that quick.
that quick,
Wow.
first time.
So do you think you were just you do you think that addictive, I want to call it because I do believe I believe that addiction, there is a level of DNA
Absolutely.
uh correspondence, so to speak. Do you feel as though it was just sort of waiting for you?
Yeah, for sure. So I was the first in my family to, you know, have an issue with drugs. But once that blanket was pulled off and my addiction became public knowledge, there was a lot of talk about, okay, who else in the family suffered or had some kind of, and it turns out my grandfather on my dad's side was you remember Pop, Grandma and Pop, they lived,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
he was, he was an alcoholic. He was the kind of guy who would drink vodka and just sit quietly in his chair. So you'd never know. He never acted.
Right.
Oh, he wasn't
He
violent.
wasn't ugly.
It was no, right. But when he passed away, there were dozens and dozens of bottles of vodka hidden all over the place. So he really suffered with alcoholism that I never knew of. I think it kind of surprised my dad too, but my father, you got to remember also, like my parents, they were partiers. You know,
Yes.
they were so social, always having parties, always going to parties, drinking, smoking, the whole nine yards. So that was like a natural state
Did
environment.
they drink every night? Did they have a glass of wine or a cocktail every night, like after work, before dinner, or maybe after dinner to kind of relax and just
Yeah.
be on the couch together?
My dad would come home every single night and pour a glass of Jack Daniels. Ugh,
I know.
whiskey. And he would have one or two. And I don't remember my mom ever having cocktails or anything during, the week necessarily. But it became a problem, and she had to put her foot down at one point and say, you know, no more. Because I think it
Mm-hmm.
was so my dad clearly had the tendency. But as we got older, I always remember him having that one glass of Jack Daniels. I guess no more no more two
Mm-hmm.
glasses or more because of my mom. But um, yeah, but then, and my mom, she liked to partake in other things.
Mm-hmm.
She's just a fun-loving person. She just,
Right.
so, um,
So there's no, in your mind, there's no correlation between growing up in a home of complete abstinence or growing up in a home of social drinking or growing up in a home of covert alcoholism. It was something that you didn't see coming. Yes? Or did
I
you
think so.
feel like when you tried cocaine for the first time that you were like, holy shit, I might need to lock and load here because this is really good.
Yeah, I really let me ref take a step back. I do believe that addiction is a genetic. It comes with genes. I do believe that. I mean, it's nature versus nurture. It's
Mhm.
definitely nature, but so I guess if we traced back in my family genes, definitely my grandfather being an alcoholic, um, played a part. And but my addiction showed up in a different way. And yes, when cocaine hit the chemistry in my brain, there was no turning back. The only way I remember, so I was going into my second year in college in Boston because I went to a junior college for 2 years before I
Mhm.
transferred. And I, when I went back to college in Boston, I started hanging around people who had cocaine on them. Like that was a weekend thing for me. And then it wasn't until my first semester, at the end of my first semester at the college that I transferred to, that I went on like a 4-day binge and I didn't sleep. And it was during Christmas break and I went on a binge. And by the time I kind of got out of that, I was so sick. And my body just kind of shut down. I was, I don't want to say going through detox because you don't really detox from that, but I got strep throat. I was just a mess. And I went back to college. My roommates packed me up, drove me back to college because I was like, I can't go. I can't even get out of bed. And brought me back there. I didn't go to classes for the first 2 weeks that I was back there because I was still so sick and rebounding from that binge. And I never touched it again after that. It took me, so about a year and a half, it was constant whenever I could get my hands on it. And then I binged and then I got through that and I never went back to it. However, when I took my first Vicodin, I got the same effect from that Vicodin as I got from cocaine. And that doesn't happen to a lot of people because most people, well, I don't want to say most people, but a lot of people, when they take an opioid, it will make them sick. It'll make them
Mhm.
tired. It'll make them sick. For me, it was energizing. It was a stimulant. So that just started me on a whole different path.
So how much time between that I can't do cocaine any longer and that first Vicodin was there?
Probably 2 years. And
So
during,
within those 2 years, did you say to yourself, did you reflect on that time that you um, did a lot of cocaine as, oh boy, like there's something chemically inside of me that makes me very easily addicted. Was it, and were you drinking within those 2 years between the cocaine
yes.
and the Vicodin?
So this is the interesting part. I just wanted to drink all the time. And I worked at a restaurant, and I was serving cocktails and staying after and partying with them. I never touched cocaine again, but alcohol became a huge part of my life then. And so for those 2 years, and it might have only been a year and a half, but whatever, it was still very prevalent. Alcohol became very prevalent. I didn't reflect on the cocaine as it was something that I was in trouble with. I just thought like it was kind of sleazy, and I was like, oh, I'm embarrassed. Like I felt like I just was embarrassed. Now, I will say this in truth and honesty, I never did anything illegal to get the drugs. I never did anything sleazy to get the drugs. They were always people around me that were just like, yeah, let's just have a good time. But there was
It was
never,
the 80s. It was the
yeah,
80s. It was
everybody had
everywhere.
cocaine. Right.
Everywhere.
It was not a
I
big deal.
mean,
So I wasn't
yeah.
like, you know, I wasn't giving anything up to get cocaine. It was just
Hmm.
part of the party scene. But I also knew I didn't want to get that sick again. And so then
Hmm.
the drinking started, and I just started drinking, drinking, drinking. And then, it was that one morning that I woke up with a mad hangover that
Hmm.
this friend of ours just said, take one of these. And I did. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. And then add, years later, a couple Adderall to that. And I felt like I couldn't live without it. I
Hmm.
didn't want to live without it. I didn't want to live feeling, not high and not energized and not, so it went off the rails.
So now within your, recovery and, we spoke a little bit last week about, finding our village, it takes a village and we sort of find our village. And then when we get more comfortable with who we are and where we are, we can expand that village into other villages, right? Um, so I guess, and I know that you have been the sponsor and counseled tons and tons of people, and for that, paying it forward, um, I honor that about you. I
Yeah.
honor you. So I guess, so somebody's sitting here listening and thinking, okay, by the grace of God, my kids got through high school, college without becoming addicted to anything. Or what about just, what would you say, or how would you, I don't like to use the word counsel because you're not a licensed counselor, but how would you speak to somebody that is saying, I think maybe my kid drinks a little too much, or I think, it seems that my partner or my brother or sister is
Yeah.
acting a little strange,
Yeah.
or, talk, tell me a little bit about signs and tell me a little bit about what to do and how to know the difference between somebody who is partying on the weekends like we did to this person's an addict.
Yeah. It's so hard. It's so hard these
Hmm.
days. It really is. When I was in the depths of my addiction, the internet was just kind of coming around. And actually started ordering narcotics and opioids and my drugs online. And it would be, I know it was crazy because they literally would call you on the phone, ask you a couple questions, and then be like, okay, I'll write you a prescription. And the next thing you know, like a bottle of pills would come delivered by UPS. And they were always in capsules. So like the pharmacist could have put anything in these capsules,
Right.
like, but I was like, okay, whatever. So
Sure.
I didn't care. I was like, good. And you pay through the nose for it, but desperate people do desperate things, right? So nowadays, people can get whatever they want in so many different ways. And it scares the crap out of me because I do sponsor a lot of women and I do work with people who have children who are addicts, alcoholics, addicts, and unfortunately, some of them have passed away because they've taken something that has fentanyl in it. And fentanyl these days is a drug of choice, straight fentanyl. That's a drug of choice for many people these days, and that is just horrifying. So, back to your original question. I've always felt that people who are having an issue with drugs or alcohol are we protect our secret, we protect our disease, we protect our drugs and our alcohol. So if somebody's gonna have a question of, hey, are you okay? I'm kind of concerned about your behavior or whatever, that defense mechanism is going to go right up. And you're going to, why would you say that? Why, I'm not doing anything different, or whatever it may be. And that to me is always one of the first clues when somebody gets defensive and can't just simply answer a question. The other one is if I say something like, well, if it's not a big deal, then why don't you just, not do it for a couple weeks and see what that looks like, and people who literally could take it or leave it, they'll leave it. They'll leave it.
Okay. Yeah.
With kids, it is so difficult because as parents, we want to see our children in a different light. We never want to think that they're struggling in any way, especially with drugs and alcohol, because it is so frightening. I saw my son go through a major life-changing disease. He had bone cancer, and it was a very rare bone cancer. And the treatment for that was very toxic. And we didn't know if he was going to survive that. And to me, him fighting an addiction with a child would be scarier to me than fighting cancer with them because there's so many variables. And for when you fight an addiction or alcoholism, you need to want to do it. The first step
Hmm.
is you having to say, I need help. This is a problem, and I surrender, and whatever it is that I need to do, I'm going to do. And that is like one of the hardest things that you can ask of somebody or that it's one of the bravest things that people can do is surrender. Um, so what does that look like? Again, it's asking the question. If you're suspecting something in your gut, chances are it's the truth. Our gut is so powerful that
Yes,
we,
we've talked a lot about that, in our conversations about the universe and the universe conspiring and the universe having a plan. We have talked a lot about your intuition, your gut. We call it in the yoga I practice, we call it your true north. Um, and it's your compass.
yeah.
And that compass does not lie. You just have to be tuned in enough to hear it, what it's saying, and the signs that it's giving you. But sorry, I interrupted. Go
No,
ahead.
no, it's so true. It's your intuition, and I want the audience to really understand that. I feel we all hear it, but so many times we don't want to believe it,
Right.
push it aside.
Yeah. Then it comes back a little bit louder.
It does. And then it
And then it
comes
comes
back.
back even louder.
and then
Yeah.
it slaps you in the face, like,
Hmm.
and to get your attention. But even then, what do we do with a child or a significant other or a loved one that is suffering with the disease of addiction and alcoholism when we don't really understand it? If you're not in recovery or you don't have the disease, or you do and you know what hard work it's going to take for them to get to recover from it, you want to bury your head. You don't want to have to
Yeah.
do that because it's just like, who has the energy for that? It's really,
Right. Right.
but
And
this
if
is
you could, and I'm sure, I'm speaking as a parent now, um, I would have done anything to take away a burden or a hard road so my kids wouldn't have to do that.
right,
So again, it's that parental, the proverbial burying your head in the sand because you just don't want to accept that your child or your significant other or and has to go down this really tough road.
right. So what do you do? How do you do it? You reach out to people who've been there before you and have
Hmm.
dealt with the same thing. And you ask them,
Yeah.
how did you do it? And what can I do to help this person?
So it goes back to that village. There's
Goes
people
back to
in
the
your
village.
village. And
That's
if the
right.
people in your direct village don't have the answers, they have an ancillary village that they can find the answer. So speak a little
Absolutely.
bit about that.
Absolutely. So, who better than to ask, how do I deal with this, than somebody who has dealt with it? Whether it's us dealing with a sick child, I had when Hunter was diagnosed, I had moms from children who were either already in treatment or had gotten through treatment, and they said, "This is what is coming your way." And they armed me with tools to handle what was coming my way emotionally for me, emotionally for Hunter, physically for Hunter, the whole 9 yards. So I looked to that also when I came into recovery. So it's no coincidence that the program of recovery is about meeting with other people who are suffering with the same disease that you are, and have either they're either starting out where you are so you can commiserate about what you're feeling every single day, or they have treaded that path and they're going to lead you through it in a way that you'll be able to handle it, and you'll be able to work out all the kinks so that you can recover from your addiction and your disease. Or you go to Al-Anon, which is made for family members of people who have substance use disorder. And you surround yourself with other family members who they may not have the disease, or they might, and they're in recovery. And you work with them to say, this is how I did it. This is what I did to keep my sanity while things were completely insane around me. And not all of those programs work for all the people. Okay, so some people gravitate to support groups like that, and others just get nothing out of it, or they just can't handle it being around people that have the same, whatever the reason is. But I'm here to tell you that whether you're helping a loved one through their substance use disorder, or you are trying to get help for yourself, it's way bigger than you. So that's when you're encouraged to find a power greater than yourself, whatever
Hmm.
that looks like, to ask for help, or to pray to, or whatever, meditate to, or whatever that looks like for each individual person. But understand, you cannot do it on your own. It just doesn't work. So that's where the tribe comes in.
Yeah.
The village, let's
Amen.
call it a village because I don't like the
Let's
word
call
village.
it the village. Yeah, it's you know, I thank you for all of that information. It was amazing. And because I'm sure like most people like don't understand or didn't understand until I put some attention on it is, well, why can't you just stop like you started? Why can't you just say like, okay, I'm not going to do this anymore like you did with cocaine or what, or like a lot of people do like, oh, they're just going to, I'm going to take 2 weeks off from drinking. And because I just, whatever the case may be, it's a New Year's resolution or they give it up for Lent or something like that. And it is a much bigger than just that. It is
Yeah,
much bigger than that.
it is. So let me just explain too that, with cocaine or with opioids, the dopamine in your brain gets replaced with the chemicals.
Right.
So when you stop using that, your body, or when you start using it, your body no longer naturally produces that. So when you stop using that drug, you crash. And all of a sudden, you're feeling all the physical pain, the emotional pain, the thing, and your body's trying to regenerate and produce dopamine on its own. And it takes time to do that. So with me saying I no longer want to do the cocaine, I had disconnected from it enough that my body had started producing the dopamine again, and I was
Right.
feeling better. And then when I took the pill, it was like immediately that dopamine
Mm-hmm.
sky high,
Right.
but it was the false dopamine. So yeah, so for people to say just stop doing it, it's a chemical reaction that your body has to go through, and it's painful. It's like having the worst flu that you could ever imagine for days where every part of you hurts and you're
Mm-hmm.
vomiting and diarrhea and headaches and no sleep and all you need to do is take that one little pill and it's going to all wash away. But then you got to start all over again. So it's
Right.
not a matter of just stop. And some people do just stop and they get through the withdrawal, but then they don't do the work on themselves to determine why it was that they needed to escape in the first place.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. I just had a little bit of an aha moment, but we're kind of running out of time, so we can touch upon it another time. Is I my dopamine came in the form of 5 hours of exercise every day.
Yes,
I overproduced my own.
yes. And
And
that's
it
the chemical
just,
reaction to your
yes,
addiction. And that's why you became,
yes, yes, 100% agree with you.
yeah,
And it was just by the grace of God that I was deathly afraid of taking drugs, deathly afraid of it.
yeah. Because how much
Almost as,
easier would it be to take a one pill and feel that same feeling that you took 5 hours of exercising to get?
yeah, exactly. Deathly, I just was like, I was not ever afraid to drink because I knew like I kind of could figure out how long it would take to get out of my system if I drank too much, right?
Yeah,
I never knew taking a pill or taking a drug was a wild card for me, and that was way too out of control for my thinking.
yeah, yeah. That's
Um,
what I've never done a hallucinogen. I feel the same way. Like I don't know how long that would last. I feel like
yeah,
I'd be out of control. Yeah, I get that.
yeah. Well, I honor you. I honor you. As much as I think about you and our youth, and it makes me laugh, and it brings me such joy to look back. I honor the work that you've done. I honor, what you are planning on doing in this space in the future. And I hope just our conversation resonates with somebody. I hope they can get tiny little nuggets out of what we talk about. And I appreciate your honesty. And if anybody has a question or wants to ask us anything, we do have a mailbox. It's rewind and reflect with us at gmail.com, all spelled out in lowercase. And
Yeah,
I think I feel like
last week.
we tackled some good stuff today.
For sure. Yes, indeed. So we'll be live again next week and
Yep.
we look forward to seeing you and namaste to all. I love you, Sue.
Namaste to all. Love you all so much. Thank you.
See you soon.